All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to now talk about the news that David Montgomery, running back for the Lions, will make his return in the divisional round, whoever the Lions are going to play. And if you remember when he got hurt initially, it looked like season ending surgery, he's done, huge blow for the Lions. But then reports were coming out that he wasn't going to undergo surgery and he's going to come back. He's going to try to come back and he is going to make his return next weekend. Again, we don't know who the Lions are going to play yet, but this is huge news for them. This is huge news for them. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs has done a fabulous job, taking on basically the entire workload out of the backfield. I mean, you saw the game he had the other night against the Vikings. He had 4 touchdowns. But getting Montgomery back is huge because, it helps out Gibbs and it just helps out the overall offense. And we get to see Sonic and Knuckles take on the NFL playoffs together after the success of Sonic 3. I have not seen any of the Sonic movies, so I might have to at some point. But, yeah, this is huge. This is a huge boost for their offense. I mean, their offense still is clicked. Even with Montgomery being out, with all the injuries that the Lions have dealt with, it really hasn't mattered. They just score points. They continue to do that. And not only that, getting him back, but they got Alex Anzalone back on defense, and he's a big piece on that side of the ball. So the Lions are starting to slowly but surely get guys back. And, you also saw Aiden Hutchinson on the sidelines on Sunday. And, he said if the Lions make it to the Super Bowl, he might play. So that would be huge getting him back. I mean, obviously, him coming back and playing in that game, I don't think he's going to get... I mean, this is way down the line, but... Well, not way down the line, but somewhat down the line. Super Bowl is about a month away. But he would not be taking, I think, that many snaps. Because he would just be coming back. But we'll see. The Lions got to get there first. And, looking at David Montgomery and the season that he's had, 775 rushing yards on the year. He has 12 rushing touchdowns and on 185 carries. And him and Gibbs have been awesome together. And you go back to last year, the year before that, they had Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. They completely changed their backfield to Montgomery and Gibbs, and that's been better. And Jamal Williams had, I think, the most rushing touchdowns in the league in 2022. And DeAndre Swift is a pretty good back as well. But the Lions were like, all right, we're gonna go in a different direction, completely different running back room. We got Montgomery, and we got Gibbs, and they've been better. And that is going to be a huge key for the Lions in the playoffs, is this running game. And they could beat you so many different ways with the running game. And both these running backs can catch passes out of the backfield, too, which makes them versatile. But the passing game of the Lions, too, that opens it up, with the play action and, Jared Goff, who's had a good year. I mean, that offense will be whole, essentially, if you get Montgomery back. Because you got Khalif Raymond back as well. And, of course, AmonRaSt.Brown, Jameson Williams, and Sam Laporta. And Jameson Williams, I think he finished with over 1,000 yards this year. So, listen, I said this before. Going into the year, that was a guy that I was saying he could step up and be that number 2 option. And also, they've gotten contributions from other players, too. I mean, Tim Patrick, had some big games for them as well. So, Yeah, this is huge news. And like I was saying, leading up to the Vikings game, and even this week, the Lions needed the bye week because I did say I didn't realize, just because I forgot, that they had such an early bye week. Week 5 it was. And on top of that, you got so many players that are hurt right now. You need that bye week to rest up and maybe get more of those players back. Now some of them are not coming back, but you got Anzalone back, you got Khalif Raymond back. Montgomery's going to be making his return. So the Lions are slowly but surely becoming whole again. And I was surprised by how well their defense played on Sunday. Now, I think part of it had to do with, Sam Darnold was a little erratic with some of his throws. But, credit to the Lions defense, though. Because, there were a lot of people going into that game saying, you know what, the Vikings are the healthier team. They might win this. And the Lions were like, no, this is our year. We're not losing in our house. And, the defense played well. Jahmyr Gibbs had a monster game. Now, how are they going to look when we get to the divisional round? Who is their opponent going to be? It's either going to be, you could see the Packers coming in if they upset the Eagles. We could maybe see, maybe it's the Commanders if they win. Could be the Rams or the Vikings. I would love for it to be the Rams again, just because every time those teams match up against each other, the game is usually good. Week 1, they beat the Rams in overtime. And then, of course, you had not the divisional round. That was against the Buccaneers. But the wild card game last year, that was also good. So if we saw Rams-Lions again, I don't think anybody's complaining about that. Unless you're one of those people that's like, oh, we've seen this already. But I'd be okay seeing Rams-Lions again. And Matthew Stafford, again, would be going back to Detroit to face them for the third time in the last 2 years, if that does happen. So, yeah, we'll see. But, as we were winding down the regular season, I was getting a little nervous with all these players getting hurt for the Lions because I have the Lions in the Super Bowl. And the two teams that I have playing in New Orleans, they both have first-round byes. That's them, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. And now that the Lions are starting to get whole again, I feel confident that they can get it done and get there. But there are some teams that I could definitely see knocking them off. And I've talked about that as we go into the playoffs here. I think the NFC playoffs are going to be fantastic. Because I do believe that any of these teams in the NFC can make a run. You can make the case. Now, maybe there's some teams that you'd probably favor more in making a run more than others. But I do think for each individual team in the NFC, you can make a case. And that's why I am, really excited for this weekend. We got some good games this weekend. Like, even when you look at the 2 seeds facing off against the 7 seeds, like, I still think those games are going to be competitive. Now, we'll get into them on Friday, of course. Well, actually, we'll talk about the 7-seeded Broncos and the 6-seeded Commanders in a little bit. But yeah, I just I don't really think there's not one matchup I look at this weekend and I'm just like, yeah, this is a horrible game. I know some people might look at Chargers Texans maybe, but I think all the games this weekend are going to be good. But we'll see. There's probably going to be a blowout in there. Oh yeah, you also could say, well, the Steelers and the Ravens. Yeah, but you never know. You never know. So, but the Lions, they got to wait another week before they find out who they're going to play. So they can rest up. They deserve it. Their fans deserve it too. Well, not that their fans got to rest up. Well, listen, they're the 12th man. Um, so they got to make sure that they're ready to go when the Lions take the field next week. Got to make sure they have their defenses back because they're going to need it. But yeah, it's good though that they're starting to get some of their players back, and we'll see if maybe some other players besides Montgomery make their return. And also, we'll see what happens with this coaching staff too, because you got Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. They're both head coaching candidates. And, we'll see if they end up leaving this coaching staff. So the Lions, if there's a chance that these guys leave, hopefully they, can win the whole thing. Because then at least if you lose them, you're like, hey, we won the Super Bowl. So I'm curious to see where Ben Johnson ends up. Because I know the Bears are a spot for him. I know he's been linked to that. Maybe Jacksonville. Talked about them before. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But let me know what you guys think, though, about Montgomery making his return. How do you see that impacting the Lions? I mean, it's not that hard. I mean, he is a very good running back for them. And, again, it just makes their offense more dynamic. And it's pretty much whole. Like I said, you get him back. That helps out Gibbs. Because, again, there's a lot of times you'll have Montgomery take a drive and then Gibbs comes in for another drive. They alternate. And that's why, if you had, my one friend had both of them in fantasy, it's fine. And you start both of them because they both could score touchdowns in the same game. And they both, take turns being the lead back on drives. So, yeah, no, it's good for the Lions. They're starting to get a little bit healthier. I know that there's some other players that are hurt. The defense is still banged up, and that definitely is concerning going into the playoffs. But again, you saw how they played on Sunday, and that was against the Vikings offense that was clicking. So, we'll see how it goes. But like I said, let me know what you guys think about Montgomery's return. We're going to take our next break. When we come back, we will talk about the Broncos and the Commanders making the playoffs, and can they make a run? Can these teams make a run in the playoffs? We'll talk about that when we return from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.